Letter 24 of Letters from Hell. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Letters from Hell by Valdemar Adolph Thisted. Translated by LWJS. Letter 24. Adventures of all kind are of daily occurrence here, but they are void of interest. Like everything else in hell, they mock us with emptiness, mere shadows of things left behind. Not long ago, at a lonesome spot, a young woman flung herself into my arms, not for love of me, but for horror of another. She was being pursued, and a sensation of fear, natural to her sex, started her into a show of weakness. It was foolish in her. She might have known that she could not really be harmed, and that whatever cause of fear there might be, I had no power to help her. But such things will happen here. We live in the notions brought hither from the world, no matter how clearly we see them to be meaningless. It was quite conceivable, then, that the tender creature I held in my arms should have been sufficiently distressed to seek the protection of my manhood. I gave her time to recover herself, and then inquired into the nature of her alarm. She lifted a pair of eyes to me, tenderly trustful, like a turtle dove's, but trembling afresh, as if the very question were too much for her shy and gentle disposition. However, she found courage to reply. "He is always after me. I do not know his name. He is seeking for Beatrice. He fancies I am she." I knew at once whom she meant. That man is one of the public characters in hell, if I may say so. It is an ill-chosen expression, but descriptive terms acquired in the world are apt to be inadequate here. In hell all are public, yet none is so in the sense you would attach to that word. What I mean to convey is simply this, that the man she spoke of is known throughout the regions of hell, pointed at by young and old, and that, wherever he goes, he is mocked with his own constant cry, "Where is Beatrice? Can anyone tell me where to find her?" This question is forever in his mouth. Beatrice seems his one thought, and the getting hold of her his mania. He is convinced she must be in hell. "For," says he, but let me cast a veil over the poor girl's history. Enough that he seeks her with such brutish eagerness as I have not known even in this place. But he looks for her in vain. Were it possible for him to find her, even hell would shudder at the probable deed. He is one of the most repulsive beings I have met, and that, surely, means a good deal here. He must be vice personified, all human feelings burnt out of him. Nothing remaining but the one wild inhuman passion that has possessed him. And then the horrible wounds disfiguring his body, his lifeblood forever gushing through every one of them. He is a refuse of the vilest in hell. No wonder that the poor shamefaced creature was filled with horror at the sight of him. "Then you are not Beatrice?" I said. "No," she replied with the meekest of looks. "I am Emily." Our acquaintance did not proceed farther on that occasion, but I somehow felt sure I should meet her again. Having left her for the present, I could not but occupy my mind with her. How was it possible, I thought, that such a creature as this Emily should have come to hell? She seemed an image of fairest womanhood. True, beauty alone is no safeguard. On the contrary, some of the most favored in this respect would seem to be here. But her utter gentleness and simple-hearted sweetness, her modest bearing, must be genuine, I thought. A veil of purity seemed to be cast about her, despising dissimulation. There was a grace not only in her face and figure, but in her every movement, that might well claim to be the garment of an innocent soul. And then, so young! A very child to the world, surely. She must be 19, but one would hardly credit even that. I saw she had been married, for she wore a ring, but she looked hardly grown up. Now, the true simplicity of innocence is admired by the most worldly even. How justly so may be inferred from the fact that it does not exist here. It is rare on earth, but some women seem to preserve the heart of childhood in spite of the promptings of the flesh and the devil. Emily, to all appearance, seemed to be one of these chosen few. As a grown child she looked, whose feet could never have been soiled with the mire of the world. How, then, did she come to wake in hell? Involuntarily I thought of the awful truth that the heart is unclean by nature, no matter what graces may twine about it, and though its lot be cast in the fairest of paths. I met her again before long, and, unnoticed by her, watched her at leisure. She sat apart, deeply engrossed, and offering a sight both attractive and singular. Her attire was of cloister-like simplicity, utterly white, the ample folds enveloping her slender form, purely white from top to toe, without a shadow of coloring, and contrasting strangely with the surrounding darkness. One thing only seemed wanting to crown the indescribable gracefulness of her appearance with the perfection of beauty — peace, which of course she had not. Her delicately shaped hands moved busily in her lap. I discovered after a while that a precious necklace occupied her attention, the pearls of which she kept counting, now beginning at one end, now at the other, but always stopping at the center, and dropping it again to wring her hands. I fancied I saw tears in her eyes, but that of course was not so. I moved up to her presently. "Are you la Dame Blanche?" I said. It was a stupid question, since there are so many ladies owning this title. But she only shook her head, saying, "No, I am Emily Fleming." "Fleming and Sparkman?" I ejaculated, surprised, naming a highly respected firm. She nodded, heaving a deep sigh. What could she mean? Was she some member of a well-known family? But she, meanwhile, had replaced the pearls on her neck, sitting motionless with folded hands. I hasten to add that no one ever succeeds here in folding hands aright. That also is of the past. She appeared lost in sorrowful thought. "Poor child," I cried, "you seem very unhappy." "Yes, yes, I am," she sobbed. "I have sustained a loss which I can never make good." "What is it you have lost, poor Emily?" "A pearl," she murmured, wringing her white little hands. "A pearl," I echoed. "A slight thing, surely, to be cast into hell for, and yet there are goodly pearls. Was not there a man who sold all he had, that he might buy one pearl of great price?" "Well, perhaps you may find it again," I said, anxious to be kind, but it was foolish. "Do you think so?" she said, brightening. "But alas, I have sought for it for years and years." The memory of a promise seemed hovering about me, that those who seek shall find, but I could not shape the words, and only said vaguely, "If you have sought so long already, you may be all the nearer the finding." It was the vainest of speeches, but it broke down the reserve about her heart. She seemed to trust me, and before long she told me the history of her life. It cost her a real effort to do so. I saw that well enough. But the longing to unburden oneself is irresistible with us. And, moreover, the veil of secrecy is always being lifted here from every soul. "You seem to be acquainted with the house of Fleming and Sparkman," she began. "Perhaps the present heads of the firm were known to you. But my history takes me back, let me see, for 7 generations. How long it seems! As a light-hearted girl of 16, I became the bride of Robert Fleming, and he brought me, a happy young wife, to the old family house. On the day we were married, he gave me a precious necklace, worth a man's ransom, as the saying is, and before fastening it on my neck, he spoke to me about every pearl in particular, adding a meaning to their value which comes back to me now with terrible force. The large blue pearl in the center, a gem rather, he said, signifies your wedded troth, the deep red one your true love, and that white one your innocence. The lesser pearls on both sides make up the number of wifely virtues, each pearl for a grace, and there are many, you see, and that which holds them together, making them your own precious adornment, is chastity and womanly honor. With his own hand he fastened the costly gift on my neck. His words had impressed me but slightly. I was young and delighted in the splendid ornament. But alas, the time came when I could but remember them in tears. Look at my necklace. The pearls are all there, but the central gem is missing, and the loss of that pearl has ruined me. Did I love my husband? I do not know what to say honestly. Perhaps I did not love him as I might have loved another. But I must own that wedded life at first seemed happy. He loved me, and 2 sweet little babies crowned our union. All went well till a family friend of my husband's entered our house, a man as false as fair. I cannot tell how it was, but he cast a spell over me. Was it that I loved him? The affection I felt for my husband was quite different, and I am sure it was true. But he somehow had never waked in me the intoxicating rapture which that other one called forth. I felt it welling up in flames of fire whenever he came near me. Was it madness? Was it witchery? I think it was a power of evil seizing upon the heated blood rather than on the mind or heart. It worked as a subtle poison. But though a poison, it was very sweet. In vain I struggled against it. Yet I can hardly say that I struggled, for although I knew those feelings to be evil, I loved to dally with them, and the will to conquer was in abeyance. Being alone with him one day, he, carried away by passion, caught me in his arms. I offered no real resistance. I felt overtaken, and a sensation as of swooning seemed uppermost. Yet I must have made some involuntary movement of escaping from his hold, for the string of my necklace giving way suddenly, the pearls rolled hither and thither about the apartment. That brought me back to myself. He too seemed suddenly dispassioned. It was as though an invisible hand were attempting to part us. We started asunder. Yes, we had been sobered all at once, reality staring us in the face. I drew myself up, requesting his immediate departure, and he obeyed. I was anxious to look for my pearls, and happily I found them all, one only remaining lost, the blue one of wedded troth. Alas, how earnestly I sought for it, morning, noon, and night, but it had disappeared as by magic. I succeeded in keeping the fact from my husband for some time, and I permitted no foot save mine to enter the fatal room. I sought and sought, but the precious pearl was lost. And at last there was a day when my husband saw that it was gone. It was a terrible moment. He said little, but from that hour a gloom rested on his brow, which spoke more loudly than words could have done. I understood it. Thy troth is broken, thy purity lost. Thou art no more for me. The false friend also seemed stirred in conscience. He kept away. How it was with him I know not, but in me the fire had been kindled which burned with a hidden flame. My heart had conceived sin, and the wicked image would not be banished. I strove against it feebly. It was stronger than I. My inward gaze followed him spellbound, and with him was my every thought. Even in dreams I was his. That moment, when we had been so very near to actual deed of sin, had left its taint. Sin had gained an ascendancy over me, and I yielded helplessly in the secret chamber of my heart. And yet that heart had been pure before it knew him, and evil thoughts had never assailed it. Alas, how little is needed to murder innocence! The white robe of my soul was soiled. One only could have restored it to cleanliness, he who would not condemn the woman that was a sinner. But for him I looked not, groveling as I lay at the feet of an idol. I fell ill, and even in illness my folly was upon me, burning within. The wild fancies of fever must have laid bare my inmost soul to my husband. My last thoughts on earth clung to that sinful moment that robbed me of my pearl. I was the prey of death. Life vanished, and, lifting my eyes again, I found consciousness returning in the torment of hell. I have come to own the justice. There was a pause of silence, and then Emily continued. Do you know what it is to go back as a restless spirit to the upper world? No? Then you are a stranger happily to a cruel law ruling some of us here. I could not rest in hell. Go back I must to seek my pearl. I have been seeking these centuries past, but it is hopelessly lost. I cannot tell you what I felt on first returning, a disembodied soul, to my former home. I trembled as one on forbidden ground. Not a corner of the big old house I left unhaunted. In passages and rooms, from cellar to garret, I have been looking for my pearl, spreading terror everywhere. But the horror seems to recoil upon me, filling me with fear and trembling. Every inmate of that house, at one time or another, has seen the white lady looking for something with a lamp. I am more dreaded than the nearness of death itself. One old servant only of the present household seems able to bear the sight of me. He has seen me so often that I believe he has got used to me. He folds his hands in silent prayer and heeds me not. It happens sometimes that we meet and meet again in the long dusty passages, he following his business, I bent on mine, with that difference between us, that he walks in confidence and I in despair. But it comforts my poor trembling heart to come upon his well-known figure in the lonely halls. I have known him from his youth upward, watched him doing his duty in uprightness of soul. His hair is white now and his figure stooping, but the nearer death he seems, the more courageous he looks, and the greater his fearlessness in meeting me. He alone appears to feel no horror at my approach, nor need he. I have as little power to harm him as he has to stop me. I can only look for my pearl. I hasten to the well-known chamber. This is the spot where for one fatal moment I yielded my soul to sin and was lost in consequence. Here it was that my jewel vanished. Here, then, I seek most anxiously with indescribable longing. But the pearl need not be here. Some one may have found it and taken it away. That is why I search the house, every chamber and every closet, peeping into my lady's jewel case and into the workbox of the humblest servant maid. It is chiefly among the women of the household that I look for the gem I lost. I flit through corridors. One of them, since time immemorial, has been used as a picture gallery. Here I find the lifelike image of the husband I so cruelly wronged. I dare not lift my eyes to it, yet I seem rooted to the ground there for hours. I keep thinking, might there not be an expression in his face, the shadow even of an expression, promising forgiveness and restoration? But I dare not look for it. I creep away, guilt trailing behind me. Guilt and shame, for my own picture hangs by the side of his, filling the measure of silent reproach. I fancy that picture to be my real self in youth and innocence, myself being but a miserable counterfeit. The pictures of my children, too, my lovely babes! My heart yearns for them who once found their heaven at my breast. But alas, they are strangers to me now. They look down upon me with eyes that know me not. Them also I betrayed, robbing them of their mother's love, and they need me not. I drop my eyes in bitter shame and hurry away. Some 7 generations I have seen come and go, the bonds of blood uniting us. But not only have they learned to look upon me as an intruding stranger, but to shun me as a very vision of hell. The venerable house has fallen into evil repute as being haunted. The family have often thought of leaving it or pulling it down, but somehow their fortunes seemed bound up with that ancient pile, and quitting becomes impossible. They accept the trouble of my presence, and I flit about, a lifeless shade among the living. The absence of a mystery, too, enables them to put up with me. I am known to be their ancestress, and my sad history, in all its details, is a matter of gossip. The very echoes of the house seem to whisper about the young wife who was so lovely but faithless. The fatal necklace is an heirloom in the family, but the central pearl is missing. A diamond cross has been added in its stead, a symbol of faith, if I remember aright. It is my necklace still, and whenever the owner for the time being is about to pass away, I appear by her dying bed with the solemn question, "Where is the pearl?" For several generations there was nothing but horror by way of an answer, and, dismayed at the terrible confusion I created, I would hurry away in despair. But an expedient has been found. The dying women now invariably place their hand on their Bible, replying boldly, "The pearl is found. We have this as a pledge." It is not my lost pearl, you understand, but there is no gainsaying their reply. Ah me! Had I found that pearl of great price, which gives such assurance to dying souls, I too might have had healing comfort for my loss. But the sin remains, my pearl is gone, and I am left to wail in torment. She was silent, writhing in agony. But even now, though filled with despair, her face preserved an expression of childlike loveliness and most engaging innocence. How bewitchingly beautiful she was! And I thought to myself, were it not that she stands condemned out of her own mouth, and had another told me her story, it would seem impossible to believe it, to credit so fair a creature with such a measure of indwelling wrong. Behold the growth of passion! It is but a passing thought, perchance, moving the heart. Whence is it, who can tell? Whence is the sudden cloud darkening the fair heaven? And whence the electric spark? Your mind conceives, and your heart, unless you guard it, will nurse the awful birth. The fiery influence shoots through your being. Your nerves tremble, your blood is aflame. And though quiet may be restored, there is that within you which at any moment may course through your veins afresh. For remember, if you had an ocean of the red stream of life, one drop of poison might vitiate it. Alas, it is more than a drop. The tempting thought has grown to a power of evil possessing you, a nature within your nature, wild, lawless, and leading you captive. Sin has taken root in your soul, innocent though it found you. How far it may take you, God alone can tell. Watch over your thoughts, then, lest they ruin your soul. Watch, I say, and stifle sin in its birth. It may be a small thing at first, but how awful is the growth, suffusing body and soul with poison, doubly dangerous for its seeming sweetness. Has it seized your heart? Ah, fly to the physician. Where is he? Alas, my friend, I know not. End of letter 24.